Hello and welcome to the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative podcast. My name is Rim. I'm an artist, a certified life coach and an NLP practitioner, and the creator of the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative retreats. Passionate about celebrating joy and beauty in the everyday, especially when things are falling apart, I'm insatiably curious about human nature, and I look into the world with reverence, awe, and a sense of wonder. Tune in for stories exploring healing through creativity, art, embracing sensitivity, and navigating the subconscious mind. I'll talk about the struggles that highly sensitive and creative people face, and share my experiences, insights, and favorite tools along the way. I'm here to empower you to turn what we often deem to be a curse into your biggest gift. I believe that the more we create together, the more we heal the world. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowered, Sensitive and Creative podcast. I'm so happy and grateful for you tuning in. Hi and welcome to today's episode. Today I'm sharing a conversation I recorded last year while I was living on the Mediterranean island of Djerba with artist Gabrielle Wildheart. Gabrielle is an award-winning public artist who paints large-scale murals for urban spaces. Her practice is rooted in public engagement and reverence for the earth. Through community partnerships, she brings creative empowerment to urban spaces. Previous clients include the Seattle Art Museum and the Hague City Government in the Netherlands. Gabrielle received classical training in portraiture from the Florence Academy of Art in Italy and an MFA from the University of the Arts London. She exhibits nationally in the US and works from her studio on Vashon Island, Washington. In our conversation, we talked about creativity, sensitivity, intuition, education, and the power of place, since we were both living on an island at the time of recording. And like me, she has experience living and making art abroad. We also talk about how art and our environment can transform not just ourselves, but the communities around us. Gabrielle brings a grounded and visionary voice to what it means to live and create with purpose. I hope this inspires your own creative path in whatever shape it takes. Let's dive in. Hello, Gabrielle. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Reem. So good to be here. I'm so pleased to finally be connecting with you.
Me too. We tried. So, for those who don't know, we tried to record our episode last month. It was 1 month, and it was super stormy where I was on my island and where Gabrielle was on her island. So you couldn't, the communication kept cutting off. So we decided to stop. But thankfully today we're here, and hopefully, fingers crossed, because there is a storm here again. Hopefully we can make it.
Yes, I hope so. I know last time before we got cut off, we talked a little bit about how we're both drawn to these remote island locations, perhaps being creative, sensitive people. But of course, that is the drawback of that lifestyle, is that sometimes it makes modern life very challenging.
Yes, I learned something. I think I was very naive, but islands are very windy. I never thought about that. But obviously, it's surrounded by water and open space, and therefore,
yeah, very windy. Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that too. But when you said that, I thought about the the Greek gods of the wind and sea, and like Odysseus, he's always traveling to these little islands and getting blown around. And when you live on an island, you do feel kind of in touch with that energy for sure.
Yes, and it's funny you mentioned Odysseus, because This morning I walked to the beach, I walked my dog, and I was thinking like, wow, maybe that's why his ship kept being carried away everywhere on all these islands because of the winds. And actually this island where I am now, it's one of the islands where he stayed on his travels. And it was yes, it was the island of the lotus, and which is actually the lotus flowers, which somehow used to grow here on the Mediterranean before, because
Wow.
here before it was very green, very, very, very green at that time. It was not as dry and arid as we know now. But anyway, so he came here on this island, and his team didn't want to leave because life was it was like Dolce Vita here, oh, everything is peaceful and nice, and there's a lot of fruits and the lotus flowers that make us fall asleep. But Ulysses was stronger than that, and he managed to convince them to go back on their travels.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
I wonder if you feel that energy at all living there, or if that history of the place of milk and honey is still present somehow, even though it's dry.
It is advertised like that. But I don't think it's true at all. I do think it's kind of putting me to sleep in a way, because it's a small island with not so many things to do, not a lot of culture going on, let's say. So in one way, it's kind of making me a bit fall asleep to the rest of the world, because I feel a bit withdrawn from the rest. In another hand, it's great because it pushes me to go to the essence of things. Like I'm living a much, much simpler life here. We don't have all the commodities and all the foods and ingredients and opportunities and activities here. So I'm focusing on the essential. But it's not always sweet. It's not always milk and honey. I think life is quite hard here. I think I'm a privileged here, but the locals are not so privileged, and I think it's really hard. There's there's a big shortage of water. In summer, water just sometimes is cut off for 2 days or 3 days. It's hard.
Wow.
No flour, anyway, like
Wow.
basic ingredients are not so easily accessible. So yeah,
That's very interesting, because I have heard that a lot of islands now they have overpopulation, like in the sense that the natural ecosystem of those islands is only designed to support a small amount of people, and yet in our modern world we inhabit things in a really big way, and so the energy of those places becomes out of balance. And in many cases, islands around the world were places people would go to for a short period of time for healing or for hunting. Like, for example, the island that I lived on only had that I do live on, only has a small Native American population that was there permanently. Very small, I think like just a couple hundred people. But Native American tribes from all around would come there at different times of year to forage the berries, and there's incredible fishing and collection of shells and like shellfish and clams and things like that. So they would come for this purpose, and they would have, what I've heard is it's actually like a party. Like, they would take their canoes over, they'd camp for a couple weeks, they'd harvest shellfish, have this amazing time, and then take everything back home with them. But they weren't living there full time. And the island was supposed to be this really healing, energetic place. And then now we have 11,000 people living on my island. And what they did to make it more habitable is they actually rewrite some of the tidal areas. Like, there used to be these big tidal flats, long beaches where the water would come in very slowly and go out very slowly and leave these really wet areas for shellfish. They changed the way the tides work so that they could build roads more easily in some places. And the native people have said that it stopped up, constricted the flow of energy of the island itself when they changed the way the water flowed. And then now they say the island is a place where people get stuck rather than people, coming and partying and taking some abundance and going home. It's now a place where they say, yeah, that the energy there is stagnant. So I don't know if that's true. I mean, I love living here, but I do recognize, wow, like this isn't very natural. We have to ship in supplies from other places, and yeah, so something to think about. And I don't know if I'll stay here my whole life. It's possible, but yeah, I do sometimes feel that energy, like you were saying, of being kind of disconnected from world events, which as an artist and creative, I also kind of like that. It's part of why I live there, but it's true.
It's kind of, for me, I see it as a retreat.
Yeah.
Really, this place for now, and it was good, and it's still, how can I say, the climate is still mild enough that it's comfortable. There's the sea. It's a simple life. It's a slow life. But what I see here, when I see the island is not that easy, is because it's very dry and there's not enough water, and because of the global warming, apparently it's supposed to disappear. Like next generation, it will be covered by water. Or, I mean, I think it's either this, or either there won't be enough water anywhere, and so the trees won't be able to keep growing because, how can you already, there used to be fruits. There used to be a culture of fruits here, but now there are no fruits anymore, almost no vegetables. They have to carry them from the land. And yeah, so,
wow.
And it's very, very touristic as well now. So it's a little bit overcrowded in summer by tourists. And unfortunately, locals, not only locals, but all these people who try to exploit tourism without caring much for the land. So let's see. But that's, so I don't know if the energy is stagnant because of that. Could be, but
yeah.
I don't know. I feel a bit sad. I feel a bit sorry. I feel like, wow, we don't realize that it's actually here. It's not supposed to be part of the Western world because it's in North Africa, but it's really close. It's at the door.
Wow.
It's only a few hours from Sicily, so it's kind of almost Europe, and we don't realize it's right here.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
But it's not here yet, so let's not be all doom and gloom. While we are here, while we are alive on this planet, we can make the most of it and create and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just thought about something. I remember you said you made a lot of sacrifices to come here, like you had to let go of some things, in order to fit this new lifestyle. But that at the same time, your artistic career had taken off since you are here. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
Sure.
Like, how did the island influence?
Yes, absolutely. I think moving to a remote community was part of a process that I was in after COVID, where I, like many people, realized I had been moving too fast and I was burnt out, and that the style of life that I had been a part of was not actually nurturing to my soul. And in the great shakeup of everything that happened, I had the opportunity to pivot in more ways than one. And so one of the things that I did was build up some online income, and then that created the opportunity for me to live in a bit more remote, a bit more disconnected from the artistic center of Seattle. And when I did that, I was able to shift a lot of things in my energy, in my person. So just calming my nervous system deeply, creating more space in my day, more time for reflection, less worry in general, and just stepping out. It was like I stepped out of the stream that was moving very fast. I just kind of stepped off and went into a different rhythm. And what I believe happened is when I did that, I really got into right relationship with my true goals in life and really who I want to be. And from that place, I just found so much more success in my career and in my relationships. And it was really interesting because my whole life, I have followed a lot of teachers, like maybe you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, or people who teach the law of attraction and manifestation. And this was the first time that I really experienced the truth of those teachings of, of creating the change from within. And I do believe, like I like to say that, you have to, I think the phrase is pray to God and also tie your camel. If you've heard that phrase, it's the idea that, you do the spiritual work, do the energy work, but you also have to back it up with real action. And so, I was taking the real action in my career to create the success that I was seeking. But it did really start first with me stepping out of that rhythm that I no longer wanted to participate in.
That's interesting. So do you think that before you moved here, when you were still in that hectic flow, hectic rhythm, you were not taking actions, or you were not taking action that were right for you? Like what was the difference?
That's a great question. I think I was taking a lot of action before, but it's like you said, it was not the action that was right for me. And my mindset at the time was a lot more anxious and stressed, and operating from a place of scarcity as well. And that was causing me to make decisions that were just not quite right. And then sometimes that it would be in such small ways that it would be almost imperceptible. Like, for example, scheduling jobs with clients too close together and not giving myself enough space in between projects. That's a small thing. And maybe it would just be like if I had given myself one more day in between commitments, then I would have felt a lot better. But I would feel like I don't have that one day. And so it could be really small things that didn't even seem like they would make a difference, but all together adding up, it was really contributing to a lifestyle where I was burning out.
I can imagine. Yes. Where do you think it was coming from, this need to schedule client back to back, or not taking a day off? What do you think was influencing you?
That's a great question too. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think it goes back to childhood, probably. One thing that is interesting is that when I was a kid, I was told that I was like intellectually gifted, and so I was put into a academic program where I was working at a higher level than some of my peers in terms of mathematics and reading and things, and in many ways that was great for me because I was stimulated and I was given great teaching, and the school system was able to meet me where I was. However, there came with that program a expectation that I would be doing everything very well, and then also taking on a lot of extracurricular activities like music and sports, debate teams and things like that. So I remember as a kid having just a very overscheduled life, and much of that was my own choice. As a kid, I was just very curious and interested, and then I had adults presenting all these things that I could participate in, and I felt like I should do that. And so there was a pattern in me that goes back to a very early age of just being overscheduled. And I think that's really common for a lot of children nowadays, whether they're in gifted programs or not. Um, but, you know, in hindsight, I can see that, like I maybe, you know, I benefited from a little bit of extra challenges with reading and math, but I didn't need to be performing at this supercharged high level in every aspect of my life. You know, I still needed a lot of time to just do nothing and stare at the clouds and just kind of be relaxed. And I didn't need the pressure to perform at a high level. So that definitely influenced me. Um, Also, I would say that just our societal stories around making art were very impactful. In particular, this idea of the starving artist, and that it, you know, it had a lot of um, messaging from the greater society that it's going to be hard to make money as an artist, and you have to work very hard, and opportunities are scarce, and things like that. So I had certainly internalized some of those stories.
Yes. And you were also living in a city where life is usually busy. And did you, I imagine it's
Exactly.
the same, but is it considered a badge of honor when you say, I'm super busy, I have so many things going on?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
So even if we don't really want to do that, it's hard to escape the pressure. I think,
Hmm.
especially when we are not so aware, when we didn't take the time to withdraw and we don't know any difference. Then I experienced the same. I was caught in that never-ending loop of fast, fast, fast. And I think I do have some elements of that naturally within me. I have a Capricorn South Node. I don't know if you're into astrology,
Mm.
but yeah, so the South Node is what is natural to you, and that actually you're supposed to let go of as you move along in your life path. But naturally, I have this Capricorn energy that is. But yeah,
So,
but when I was a child, I did like to play and dream. So I think it's the conditioning from society, at least for me. But also, yeah, I know the pressure to perform for sure. I skipped 1 year. I was 1 year ahead in my class, so I was not a gifted child, but I was kind of an advanced child.
mm,
And I was really happy because I was bored at school at my level. But I remember that I did feel some pressure that means that I have to go far in my life, whatever that means. Like, you know, like somehow I cannot fail, otherwise I will disappoint. Otherwise, why would they put me in an advanced class? You know,
yeah.
I did feel something like that a little
How
bit. I
interesting. We
didn't
share
realize
that.
until, yeah. It's funny. I never, I never thought about like, I never thought about this as a pressure, but now that I think about that, it was. And I
Mm,
remember it gave me some anxiety later on in my life when maybe like I remember once like I wanted to get into a program, I didn't get in. I had to wait 1 year, and I remember this anxiety. I was like, so I missed that 1 year, but I was supposed to, I was supposed to gain a year, not to lose one.
wow.
Um, yeah, it's
Oh,
funny.
that is funny. Yeah, I have thought a lot about in my own life my experience of going into that program and how it's maybe impacted me. Um, and something I notice about it is that when I was tested to like see what my aptitudes were, I was very young. I was about 7 years old, and oftentimes they test children at this age. And I have fantastic parents who I'm still very close with, and my mom is a writer. And one of the things that was part of our family culture is that my mom used to read with me a lot, and she used to write stories, and I would illustrate the stories and write them with her. So I was doing a lot of drawing and writing and thinking and verbalizing. And so when they tested me, of course, I was very advanced in those areas. And then, they sort of said, oh, she's gifted. And, maybe I was gifted, maybe not. Maybe I just had really great parenting in some areas. And I also, I'm a white middle class child. So I wasn't dealing with racism or poverty or any of these other factors that can make it really stressful for children. But as I grew, I was expected to maintain this level of advancement. And as I got older, I realized I actually wasn't very good in math or in science or some of these other subjects. And I really struggled in those areas. And yet I felt this pressure to live up to this title that had been placed on me as a very young age. Fortunately, like I said, I had really great parents who were modeling, alternative lifestyles and just really accepting me, whoever I was. And so in high school and after graduation, I was able to say, hey, maybe this isn't me, or maybe I don't need to be a high achiever in all of these ways. And if I just want to write and draw pictures and excel in that area, that's fine. But I think about a lot how we evaluate people's abilities, and especially with children at a young age, we just have a very limited understanding of what makes an advanced brain. And I actually believe that all children can be gifted when given the right nurturing and the right attunement. I think we all have these innate gifts, and it just takes somebody kind of giving the child the opportunity to blossom, as my parents did with art and with language.
Yes. Yes, that's true. I think we also have different gifts, different sets of
Yeah.
gifts. And that's what is beautiful. We need a diverse world. We need diverse humans. Like, imagine if everyone was innately talented with art and drawing, and with art and literature. I mean, that would be lovely. But we also need those who are talented with building things, with math, with science. Like, we need all of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we need each other. And we need to recognize all the different gifts in people and value them, and valuing people who are very sensitive, just as much as people who are very strong, or all these different things.
Yeah, this reminds me, I took a test once for like to know if I had this high IQ, because I didn't know I was an HSP back then, but I remember when I read this descriptions about those who are quite advanced, I could see myself not on all of that, but I was feeling guilty, because I thought, who am I to think I'm advanced, this little bit
Yeah.
of but I could see, like, I don't really fit in normal society. I think in a different way. My thoughts are going like this. They're not going like this. Like so I'm gonna do the test. And when I did the test at the end, no, I didn't have high IQ. I had a normal one, a good one, but not like normal one. And I was a bit disappointed. But the therapist told me, she said, "Oh, but the test is actually not valid, not really valid, because you are so sensitive to." Because in that, when you do the test, it's timed, so you have to be very fast. And it's not that I was fast doing the thing, but I was, before doing the thing, I would read the instruction 2 or 3 times to make sure I understood it well. And at the end, once I completed, I would check my work to see if I did it well before going to the next. So she said, it's actually, you're probably one of those who, like, very sensitive to criticism or to failure or something. You have this kind of anxiety of doing it wrong, of making mistakes, which actually didn't allow you to finish on time or fast enough. So the test is not really conclusive, because they don't really. So I thought that's so interesting. Then later on, I realized I'm an HSP. And I mean, not all HSPs are like that, but I know that a big trait like of HSPs being worried to make mistakes.
Oh,
Like making sure they do it well, like being very conscious when they're
yeah.
doing something.
That's a perfect example of how our methods that we have to evaluate people and assess people's worth and competency are just so inadequate. And I wonder what it would be like in society if we had a better way to really understand people's strengths and their abilities. And I don't know what that would look like, but I just imagine such a more successful society, a happier society where people could be um, just fully who they're meant to be, and fully and have the space and permission and validation to really dive deep into understanding their gifts. And so, like with you, how did you eventually learn that you were an HSP, and what conditions allowed you to realize that and explore that?
Well, I knew I was sensitive. I didn't know there was such a thing as HSP. You know, it's strange. I have a blank. Like, I don't know how I got that book, but I know that I got that book, the book by Elaine Aron, and I don't know how. It's
Wow.
insane. I just know that one day I bought it, and then sometime later I picked it up and actually read it, and the time in between is totally blurry in my head. It's so interesting. I
Yeah.
know that at that time I was living in Shanghai for sure. I bought it when I was in Shanghai, so I was living in a very fast-paced city, huge city. I think it's 24, 26 million people.
Mm.
So it's like the mega city. And I was working a lot. It was exhausting. I think I was teaching fashion design at university. So it was a very exhausting job because I had to be there all the time. The boss was very controlling, and she was like, I don't trust anyone. I have to check on you. You have to be there. The place was ugly, not comfortable, you know. So all of these details. Everybody was complaining, but I felt like for me it's even more debilitating. The lack of comfort, of beauty, of the cold, getting in the hallways, the idea of having someone controlling me all the time. Like my nightmare. Also, the idea of having to follow some stupid rules without any meanings, the lack of depth in the job, lack of meaning. It was a private university, so even though I would grade my student school, if they were rich enough, they could buy out their grades. So I was like, why do I bother actually grading their work? Like, what's the point? Why am I here? Why am I doing this work? It's not only about the grade, it's also about what you teach and you share with your students. So that part was good, but you know, all of that thing. And yeah, I think I was just totally burnt out. So I probably bought that book then,
Mm.
and I realized, yeah, I do feel different from my colleagues. And
Mm. That's makes me think how sometimes it takes that burnout or that reaching of hitting the wall, I suppose, to really understand the change you need to make. And I think a lot of people experience that globally in the pandemic, and it's been really interesting to talk to creative people and just watch how neighborhoods have changed and cities have changed since then. I am noticing that a lot of people are waking up to their sensitivities and their need for more meaning and creativity. And I think we're still in the early phase of this transformation. I mean, we're over the big trauma of it, that's past, but the ramifications, the ripples, they're still rippling. And so I'm really curious to watch how this will go. And then I think it will be interesting maybe in 10 years when we have more perspective and we can kind of look back on this big shift.
yes, but I think it's great because more and more people are seeing that they need different things. I feel like this time was like a chaos or like a storm, since we've been experiencing storms, like a big storm, but a storm is really tiring and painful and confusing. But then at the end, it clears the air, and then we're able to see more clearly maybe things that we couldn't see before. So now the fact that more and more people realize that they are sensitive, that there's such a thing as being very sensitive, and that's actually a great thing.
Mm.
And how can it help us? All of
Yeah,
that. It's great. How did you
that's a
find out about you being an HSP?
well, I think
I'm
that,
curious about.
yeah, I think that it goes back again to my parents and family culture, that I was given a lot of space to be whoever I wanted to be and to pursue my own happiness in life. And so that created an environment where the exploration of my sensitivities was really supported. And um, I didn't get very serious about that until an adult. I always felt like I was very creative and somewhat intuitive, but I didn't get serious about studying and developing my abilities until adulthood. So part of that, I went to art school, and I became um, practiced in certain mediums, and that's a piece of it. But also on sort of a more deeper level, an interpersonal level, I started studying yoga, and that led me to the study of meditation. And then the study of meditation led me to the study of more kind of esoteric mysticism traditions. And then from that experience, I started having awareness of kind of my own extrasensory abilities as I was learning about the lineage of intuitive practices or healing practices, and that led me to want to become more trained. So I eventually studied Reiki, and then went on to become a Reiki master. And then, I mean, it's been like a journey of almost 20 years where I've sort of, one thing has led to deeper inquiry in something else. But like I say, I think it all goes back to having a fertile environment for it, and really believing in the importance of following my heart and not having a lot of blocks to that. So, I work as an artist now, and that's my main income, which is wonderful. But then in addition to that, I have a lot of practices that support my creativity and support my intuition. I'm very connected to my dreams. I keep a dream journal. I practice energy work, not as a profession per se, but I work with friends who are sick, just pro bono. I work with my animals a lot. I work on myself, and I teach energy work on the side, and then just do things like leading women's circles. So all these practices support my own exploration of my inner sensitivities, and I see that as being really interlinked with my creative practice, which is my career. I couldn't really have one without the other.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. I can't have
Yeah.
one without the other. I feel like that's why I call this podcast the Empowered Sensitive and Creative. For me, it's linked. Of course, not all creatives are sensitives, but it doesn't matter. It's for this space is for those who recognize themselves in both, in the two things. And I think they nourish each other. But I find very interesting that for you, apparently, like sensitivity, the highly sensitivity, you see it as a highly sensory, first and foremost, apparently, like this intuition. What about the rest? The sensitivity to what's going on in the world, to the harshness, sensitivity to a lot of information coming in, all of those aspects. Do you experience that as well, like overwhelm?
Yes, absolutely. I think,
Maybe sensitivity to criticism, because sorry, just because sensitivity to criticism, because as an artist, you kind of have to be facing a lot of opinions about your art.
yes. Oh,
So
absolutely.
what's your experience with that?
Well, just to speak about, the relationship to things going on in the world, um, I I have some really firm boundaries about how much media I consume, I don't read the news regularly. I do sometimes, check it, especially if I hear that something major has occurred and I want to know more information. But I tend to have a really powerful filter for what information I take in. And the interesting thing about that, so I'm married to somebody who is kind of the opposite. He loves to read about information and kind of analyze things and talk about it, and so we've had to negotiate that in partnership. And I think this is kind of like a microcosm of how it is for highly sensitive people in the world. People might look at somebody who's not reading the news and say, "Oh, you're just you're being naive, or you're sticking your head in the sand, and shouldn't you be more informed to know what's going on?" And I think for highly sensitive people, that's not it's not true. Like, actually, it's really important for us to protect our wellness, our mental health, and that means ignoring a lot of information. Because the truth is, I do hear when something big happens that I need to know. Trust me, I hear about it. And being highly sensitive, I'm picking up conversations in the coffee shop. I'm reading people's energy, and so I do feel like I have my antennas tuned to the world pulse. But if I take in too much information, I just collapse, and then I can't be of any service to the world. And so having that filter is how I keep myself, if our bodies are an instrument and our souls have a purpose, it's how I keep my instrument tuned and healthy, so that my soul can do its work. So that that speaks to the world events, though. Even still, I will have moments where I'm just feel so emotional. Even with my strong boundaries, it can still get through, and then I have to let myself just feel it, and that's part of it too. As for the criticism piece, you really hit the nail on the head of something that I felt a lot when I was younger. I was such a perfectionist, and even still, I mentioned my partner. If my partner says, like, "Hey babe, we need to talk about something," I'll immediately have a moment where I'm like, "Oh no, I've done something wrong." He's going to tell me that, I need to be better about the laundry or something like this. And then I have to say to myself, whoa, pause, take a breath. You don't know that he's going to criticize you. And, most of the time it's like, "Oh, can you pick up some milk from the store?" or something, but I still have that reaction whenever I think someone's going to give me bad feedback or criticism. It's very upsetting. But, I had to work on therapy. I'm a big believer of like getting therapy or doing somatic body work or just something, to support your growth. But then I also think the practice of just stepping into an artist as a full-time job has forced me to face that shadow of my own perfectionism and really develop a healthier relationship to it. So like I said, I still have that moment of freak out when I'm getting bad feedback, but I'm much more able to create some space from it and respond in a healthier way. And one of the things that I always tell my art students or people who are thinking about having a career in the arts is that you should aim for 100 rejections a year. I say this all the time, and it was advice that was given to me from a teacher, and it has been so profound. To shift my relationship to rejection and really look at a rejection is a success, because it means, and I apply for things all the time. I have a spreadsheet that I keep every week, and I'm updating, and I'm always submitting for art opportunities, public art, teaching jobs, all sorts of things. And I get rejected all the time. And then sometimes I get accepted, and that's wonderful. But I think just that simple practice alone has really allowed me to strengthen my muscle of receiving rejection and being okay with it. And that has served me so well.
I love that. That's amazing. Yes, I agree. Yes, I used to say that to my students. You seek rejection. I mean, it's great. It's painful at the beginning. Later, it's sometimes still a bit painful, but it's worth it. and I'm still working on it. Because sometimes it's easier and sometimes ouch. But we always, it's at the end, it's an emotion and we always survive it.
Yeah.
We survive rejection even though we think we won't. So I love that. I think it's a great practice. 100, that's great. I think we will do we'll start a challenge. We still, it's already the end of April, but we still have a few months. Well, more than half
Yeah.
the year to do that. So
Yeah. I have never actually hit 100 in 1 year. But I'm still working towards that goal, but I get a lot in the year.
you know why I love it? Because I think it's make it much more fun. It's, how can I say? I think it relieves the pressure of I have to find 100 positive opportunities. Like I need to be accepted 100 times. That feels very stressful. Like, oh my God, I have, like I'm applying and I have to be accepted. But then if you say, oh, I'm applying and I'm seeking 100 rejection, it's like, it's a game. And I know, maybe as you say, you're not reaching the 100, but I know I'm going to reach rejection. So at the end, I feel like I'm actually getting what I want. So I'm successful. And it makes the subconscious happier to get along because it feels like it's been rewarded because you actually achieved your goal or part of it.
Yeah. You know, something else
So
about this practice is in order to apply to a lot of opportunities, you have to be somewhat organized about your application materials. So just on a logistical note, I have a folder and in it, it has, my resume, a little statement about who I am and my favorite portfolio pieces. And then I update it, maybe a couple times a year, but it makes it very easy for me to send out an application for whatever opportunity. But also I noticed that the more I applied for things and the more I'm, just sending that information out about myself, it helps me to become very clear about, who am I really and what is the essence of what I want to share in the world? What am I most proud of? How do I describe myself in just a few sentences? I mean, that's really hard to describe yourself in just a few sentences, especially if you're a creative person like us who's probably doing many different things. But just that practice of condensing and just crystallizing, what it is that I most care about. And that's an amazing exercise as well. And I think then kind of helps to create a guideline for many decisions. So when you understand what it is that you're most proud of and you most want to achieve in life, and then every time you're faced with a decision like, should I take this opportunity or should I go on this trip, and it kind of helps you to say, okay, how does this align with who I'm really trying to be? And so I again, as an exercise for my students, I always have them kind of practice writing out, just a little paragraph about, what matters the most to you. And of course it's going to change to be perfect the first time, but just that exercise, what are your values? What's your main offering? Super profound.
I agree. I love that you're saying this. Yes. It starts from here. I mean, and it's not something, sometimes we think, oh, I'm going to do it overnight and then that's it. Everything is going to flow. But as you say, it's a refinement process. If we evolve our values, maybe the core values, they don't really evolve. They are there, they're like the pillars, but even the way they will manifest or they will express themselves might evolve as we evolve. It might look like a different thing. So, and it's a great occasion to reevaluate also as we change.
Yes.
I agree. I wanted to ask you something else about that. Oh yes, sorry. Talking about being organized and making it easy for you to apply and also being clear on your values. Did you find that, because I remember when I was younger and applying to creative jobs or freelance opportunities, I noticed a lot of the time, like they are looking for something, and I felt like, well, I could do it, but it's not exactly like, it's part of me, but I felt like I had to twist myself a little bit in order to fit that thing. So I felt like, okay, so I have to redo my resume
Mm.
because my experience doesn't exactly match exactly that. And then I wanted to do something else after that. Oh, but now I have to twist on the other side. So, okay, I need to change my resume a little bit again. And I've noticed like a lot of my clients and students also struggle with that. It's quite
Mm.
common in the creative world where we, as you said, we do so many things, and we also, and as sensitive, sorry, as highly sensitive people, we have the natural ability to be a chameleon in a way, which is great, but sometimes can be to our detriment. It can be very stressful and
Mm.
tiring to always. So, what's your take on that?
That's a great point. And I know exactly what you mean. And I especially relate to what you say about having the ability to change yourself to fit different situations. And also, you, as a sensitive person, you can often tell what somebody else is looking for. And so then you have that choice. Okay, this person wants someone who maybe is, very bold and direct. I have the choice now. Do I show the very bold and direct parts of my personality, or am I actually feeling more soft and quiet? And do I stand strong in who I am feeling right now? I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I think you have to kind of evaluate situation to situation. How much do you want to shape yourself? But it is like a superpower, right? I always think of it as a superpower that you can, to be able to do this. And I can speak to how I'm much more consistent in what I show from job to job than I used to be. That's also because I have over 15 years now of a career. So I have kind of built the ability to be consistent around a certain set of values and aesthetics. However, even within that, I have different strains. So different kind of threads of my practice. So I have a presentation that I might give to someone who is looking for public art for a very diverse community. For example, maybe a mural that's going to be in a town square that has to appeal to a wide range of people. That is one type of presentation that I would give. And then I have a different one that I would give to someone who's more interested in my divine feminine fine art. I have a whole body of work around the sacred feminine and honoring the yoni and connecting women to their erotic energy. And I have that type of content is not appropriate at all for a public space where you have men, women, and children, and you can't just be flashing discussions about vaginas and sexuality there. So as much as I love those conversations, I have to keep those things kind of separate. So I have kind of created separate collections that I know will go to different places, yet all of it feels like me. So I have sort of the umbrella that is me, and then underneath that umbrella I have different parts of me. But that even with that umbrella, it can still feel schizophrenic, and I think that is something that I kind of constantly navigate. It's a constant balancing act. Like, am I being authentic? Am I sharing all of myself? So yeah, like I said, it's sort of client to client. There's definitely some tweaking going on, but it gets easier. It gets easier.
Yeah, and as you said, organization and structure, and it's not something
Mm-hmm.
that you do overnight, right? It's
No.
also built with time. You, as you said,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's
And
also, yeah.
oh, just I would just add that when I was younger and I was less organized and less clear, that tendency to shift myself into different things, in the end, it ended up serving me well because it gave me a lot of different types of experience that I may not have had if I had tried to just stick to one thing. So that was a benefit too.
Yes, I agree. It's all serving, like, I feel like all these different things. Sometimes some external people may say that we're a bit scattered, or as you said, schizophrenic, but I think no, it's enriching, and it's I think it allows us to understand human nature better, to understand humans better, because we've experienced different things and different sets of people, different, I don't know, different settings. But also it helps us to understand ourselves much better, and as an artist, I think it's so important to have a broad view, even though at the end we may end up doing only one type of art. Okay, we might have different style, but even if we have one, I think it's all been enriched. And that's why I think it's so funny when some people say, oh, you're an artist, you're just an artist, why should I pay so much for your art? You know, it took you only 2 hours, or whatever. I'm just saying, just like that, to make it. But what they don't understand is all the years before of experimenting the world, seeing, observing, analyzing, translating it into all this language that is art.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. And learning how to value that is so important, to value not just the thing that you create, but also the thought process behind it and the years of experience that allowed you to create that. I think when artists make that shift and they start to value the whole picture, that's when things become a lot easier. And something that I have to think about a lot is value. I'm always pricing my work for things, and so one of the things an exercise I try to do, because even still, I find myself not valuing myself or feeling afraid to ask for money, but I do this exercise where I think about all the different ways that art provides value in the world. And there's so many beyond just a physical object. And I did a poll on my Instagram for my followers, and I said, what are some of the ways that art gives value to your life? And it was so fascinating, the responses. Some people said, it just inspires me to think outside the box. And other people said, it shows me a perspective that I can really feel that maybe I wouldn't have been able to feel otherwise. And so all these varied possibilities. And I think it's so important for us as artists to connect to that beyond just the physical piece, and that will help us to stand in our worth.
Yes, yes, yes. I think in art school, it's, too often they are course about technique, which is great, but they should be course about holding your boundaries and worth, like feeling that being an artist is worthy, and it's worth the price. All of those things that most of us are totally clueless when we get out of school, and we're like, ah!
I love that. That's so genius. Yeah, art school should be one half technique and the other half personal growth work. That's great.
Definitely. Yeah, and there will be less starving artists and less bitter artists, which is a very sad thing to happen. Bitter artists. But yeah. Well, we're going back to education. This makes me think that, when you asked earlier, we should help children, encourage children to find what's their zone of genius, and I think that's also what we need. We need therapy and coaching for children, for teachers first and foremost, and then kids. They need to have personal development and spirituality teachings.
Yes.
I think in class, it's not all about math and grammar and history and science. I mean, all of these are really important, but maybe we don't need to have so many hours of that.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many things I wish I'd learned in school, and I do believe that the school system, the public school system, certainly in the US, is kind of modeled after um, like industrial production systems. So this idea that we just produce as many workers as possible, and I think that's no longer relevant. And again, talking about the shakeup that happened with the pandemic, it was just devastating to the school system. And especially where I live on this remote community, there's a lot of people that are homeschooling their children now since the schools shut down. And even though they're now again open, a lot of people realized actually their children are much happier in homeschooling. And I know when I was a child, the children that were homeschooled were often like the strangest kids. They had no social skills, or, lived in really extreme kind of cultures, religious or isolationist. But now I'm seeing that there's this whole movement to change the structure of schools, and my friends who are homeschooling their kids are the most well-adjusted, social-friendly people, and they have, access now from the internet to all this information, and they're shadowing grown-ups and different jobs and having a great time. So I am really encouraged by that. I think we're recognizing the need for shifting, and just the ways that our education system isn't meeting the needs of children anymore. So hopeful, fingers crossed, that this next generation has a better experience.
Yes. But I think the young people now, not everyone, of course, but there are growing numbers of youngsters who are interested into those spiritual, mystical, creative fields, and I feel like there's a rise in the urge of self-expression and authenticity. And of course, sometimes it's tossed around like that and doesn't mean anything because it's like just, buzzwords, but still, I'd rather have this as a buzzword than let's all climb up the corporate ladder.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's my opinion. But
yeah,
I want to ask you something else, and it's not linked, but I want to ask you before I forget. It's about your experience in Italy, because I know you've had a quite exciting, crazy, original experience as a street artist, right? When you were younger?
Yes, that's right. That's how I got my start as an artist. When I was 20, I actually had dropped out of art college in the US. I went for a year and found it to be very stressful, and I was a bit lost. So I was dropped out of school, and I, in that period, discovered this portrait painting apprenticeship program in Florence, Italy. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a dream come true. And so I ended up enrolling in that program. I took out student loans to move to Italy. And I thought, oh, I'll just go for 6 months and that will be amazing and I'll learn so much. And then after 6 months, I realized I love it here so much. I never want to leave. I have to figure out how I can stay here for longer. And I wanted to keep studying traditional oil painting and keep studying Italian culture and soaking up the life. And so around that time, I was walking through the town square in Florence, and I saw this woman, and she was drawing a beautiful, huge version of Botticelli's Birth of Venus on the sidewalk with chalk pastel. And I was mind blown. I had never seen anything like it. And I'd never seen a young woman doing anything like that. And I was so impressed. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And as I was living there, I eventually connected with somebody who knew the organizer of all the chalk artists. And I was able to set up a meeting with them. And I learned that there was a guild of street painters. And in Italian, it's called Madonnaro art. And it means a person who paints the Madonna in sidewalk chalk. And it's actually a historic art form that goes back to the Renaissance, where the artists would paint pictures of the Madonna in front of churches for holy days. And then now they just do it as sort of street busking entertainment, and they paint whatever they want, but it's still beautiful. And I learned about this guild. I asked if I could apply, and they sort of looked me up and down. I showed them some pictures of my artwork that I'd done in school, and they said, okay, we'll give you a shot. And they allowed me to come out one day. You had to rent the spot back then, and it was €2 a day to rent the spot from the commune of Florence. And so I had my permit, and I decided to draw the painting that had originally gotten me interested, which was The Birth of Venus. And it was a painting that I had loved and been inspired by, and I just completely nailed it. I felt this flow and this sense of really discovering something that I was good at. And I had been studying art, for a couple years at that point, but really I think I discovered something that I just had an aptitude for, which was working fast, working with chalk, and then working on a big scale. And after that day, the organizer of the guild said, sure, you can be a member. And from that point on, I rented a permit on the streets of Florence every week, and I did that for about 3 years. I worked as a chalk painter, and that was how I financed my whole life in living in Italy. And because it's such a touristic place, street busking was really lucrative there, and I made enough to live on, working 1 or 2 days a week. Of course, I was living on a student lifestyle, so renting a room in a really busy student house, eating just lots of pasta and rice and stuff. But it was fantastic, and it was really the start of my career as a public artist. And I had so many wonderful adventures. I traveled around a little bit and would busk in different cities and made friends with the other artists. And I like to describe it as like being a pirate artist. There was just all these characters of buskers for whom it was a very committed life, people who had been doing it for 30 years, and they were just this motley crew of colorful people, and it was a tremendous education.
Wow, I love it. Nice. I think traveling, and I think when you travel, you do, I mean, everywhere, but particularly when you travel, you take yourself out of your comfort zone, you take yourself out of what you already know, and somehow you kind of get into those totally unexpected situations and opportunities, and they kind of reveal yourself to you. And I think that's amazing. And I find that this is an aptitude that HSPs have, because I know a lot of HSPs tell me they want to travel, they want to live abroad, but they're afraid, they're stressed, overwhelmed. But actually, the natural adaptability thing that we were talking about, it's an asset for the situation. I think naturally we are able to merge and to flow better with different cultures, even though maybe we don't know much about their culture. We have this ability to connect, and I think that's something to take advantage of as an HSP.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it specifically that way, but you're right, because I remember when I was learning Italian, and learning how to be a street painter, I did feel that way, that I could pick up the language and the nuances, and because I was feeling things that were beyond the surface, and I was able to really learn Italian well and merge into this subculture, and it's definitely because of my empathic traits.
Yeah. And so how did you make the leap to leave and go back? Did you go back to the US after that?
Yeah,
what happened?
it was a combination of things. One being that after 3 years, I was having a great time, but I realized I had reached a sort of ceiling where I didn't feel like I was growing or expanding anymore. And if I stayed there, I could see that I would just be keeping doing the same things. And even though that was fun, I was only 22 and I wasn't ready to settle down. And I knew I needed more expansion and education. And around that same moment, I had a terribly abusive relationship situation happen where I started dating a man, and we were only together for a short period of months, but that person was very psychologically unwell, and he became very aggressive and manipulative and violent towards me. And it was a traumatic experience where I had to get the police involved and change my locks, and that all coincided with me realizing I needed to go home and I needed to regroup and do some healing and figure out what was next. And I mentioned the traumatic relationship event because now I have experienced a lot of healing and it no longer hurts. But at the time, I felt so much shame about it. And I never expected to find myself in that situation. I was an educated woman from a happy family, a good childhood. And it was really an awakening to me about the dangers that women face in the world. And then as I started to heal from that experience and talking to other women, I realized how many women have experienced, sexual assault or harassment or just manipulation from men in relationships. It's so common. And so that experience really kind of broke my heart open to understanding the female experience, the female challenges, and the pain that women carry around the world. And that uh, understanding was the catalyst for me to dive into it in art, and that really propelled me to the artwork that I do today around the divine feminine.
Wow. So from a breakdown, a breakthrough.
Exactly. I just noticed that I forgot to plug my computer in, and my computer is going to run out of battery. I'm so sorry. Like, give me just one moment, and I'll just grab the plug. Okay. Okay.
Okay, all good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me remove the mark. Okay, well, it's interesting. I mean, thank you for sharing your story. I think something that a lot of my listeners will resonate with, because I talk a lot about toxic dynamics. And I think, as you say, women all over the world, unfortunately, they still attract a lot of, no, it's not that they attract, but they still face the abuse of a lot of unhealthy men. And I think also HSPs and empaths kind of tend to attract more of this unhealthy dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
because we can feel the goodness of the person beneath their actions, and we often fall in love with that goodness or that potential.
Yeah, that's true. That's why setting up strong boundaries and knowing yourself first and foremost is super important. But that being said, even though it was really sad and difficult for you, you still managed to do something beautiful out of it. And it helps others.
Yeah. And like I said, I think before that happened, I had this idea that those things only happen to stupid women or women who aren't empowered. And I wasn't as compassionate as I could have been towards women in those situations. I didn't even realize that I was holding those beliefs, but when it happened to me, I had to unpack all these unconscious beliefs, and so my compassion just exploded for women, and I'm so glad to have that compassion now. It makes me a much better person.
I agree. I mean, I've experienced similar things, not in their relationships, but I know that I did held some judgments, and then I experienced something, and then I realized that compassion was needed there. Also compassion for myself, because I remember that I used to judge myself and beat myself up for, how stupid were you to fall for that? Why did you not pay attention? Why did you say yes? So, all of these things. And that's not helpful.
No, yeah, it's so important to have compassion for oneself. And I mentioned earlier that I'm a big believer in therapy, and I in my 20s in particular, I spent a lot of time with different therapeutic modalities, and I worked definitely on this issue in therapy and others. But I noticed one of the things that was really helpful was, in addition to the talk therapy I was doing, I did some somatic work. So things like dance and shaking and breathing to really move trauma or sadness or patterns out of my body. And that was so helpful to me, and was eventually what led me to want to become a yoga teacher and do some of this work and teach it. But I think that combination is really important for women, especially like as women, we are hosts to things in our body. We literally, when we're with a man, at least we're hosting that man in our body, and then we're just so feeling and open, and we have our cycles, and we're so connected to the earth. So just, I think having some kind of physical practice to move energy, clear energy, is really important, even if you're not dealing with big trauma, but just if you're a sensitive person and just want to remove the stress of the world every day, you have to find something physical.
Yes, and trauma, I think we're all traumatized. We all have some sort of trauma. If it's not like trauma like now in this lifetime, we carry generational traumas from our ancestors, from our mothers, our grandmothers, like women, witches,
Yes.
women who were burned at the stake.
Yes.
and all of that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
And it's so exciting to be alive in this time where we get to free ourselves from all these traditions and patterns. I think about that. We really get to heal our ancestral lines.
Yes, that's what I love saying. I agree. And I know a limiting belief that sometimes can hold us back is to think, but who are we to make our life better? Who are we? Like our ancestors or other people, they managed to deal with that. They managed to survive. So why don't we? So why do we have to do something different? Why do we have to choose joy or peace or the easy way? Life has to be hard, right? No, we have the choice. And maybe in those times and ages, especially they didn't have the choice. That's even more why that now that we have the choice, we have to do it, we have to take it, if only for them.
Yes. Yes, I've been learning a little bit about ancestor work, and it's a new concept to me personally, even though I know in many cultures it's very important, especially indigenous cultures and kind of in African cultures. But it's not something I've been personally in touch with. Where I'm at with it right now in my studies is just starting to feel the presence of ancestors, and I wouldn't say I'm necessarily working with them yet, but I'm practicing just feeling them. So one of the visualizations I've been doing is imagining behind me a long line of my ancestors, my grandmothers and grandfathers, stretching back into time, and just to feel all their hopes and dreams for me, and how everything that they did in their whole life, all their choices were made to give the best to their children and their children and their children. And so, exactly like you said, who am I to not be the biggest version of myself when I have all those ancestors behind me who care so much, and I am the embodiment of all their dreams, and that's an insult to them if I play small or neglect myself.
Yes. It's true. It's true. And
Yeah.
also understanding that even if they might have had the choice, maybe they didn't take it. Maybe they just didn't know any better. It's not because it's our mothers or grandmother that they knew better. They also made their mistakes, like everyone. But now
Yes.
that like we know, it's not that we know everything. Of course, there's still so much to learn, but we know a bit more. Let's say we're a bit more conscious.
Yes.
It's our like it's our duty
Yes. Do you
to lift the. Yeah. Tell me.
do you know your
Do you know?
ancestry?
No, not too much. I don't know my family's. I know from the French side, they were country people, like peasants, like farmers. So they had a hard life. They're from the Alps, the region of the Alps. So Alps, mountain people are usually quite tough. Some of them have Italian origins because it was close from Savoy, but anyway, that's not important. And from the Tunisian family, very poor people as well, from another island, probably fishermen, I guess. So I think the women had a very tough life. My grandmother here, she had a very tough life. I think she got married at 14 or 15.
Wow.
To a man maybe 20 years older than her. So it was a
Wow.
really another time, another thing. But the rest, I don't know. I don't know anything. But I have this feeling. I've seen it in some hypnosis. I've done some regressive past life regression. And I've been studying a lot my astrology chart and karma and my numerology. I'm really into these things. And I definitely have a heavy karma. So either my ancestors, like women from my lineage, they were burned or something like that, or I was in a past life. I don't know if you believe in past life,
I
but I
do.
start to really, and I can feel I was definitely a heretic burnt at the stake for sure.
Mm. Wow. I'm getting goosebumps, chills as you say that. Feels very true.
But
It's
well, I don't know. I
it's
mean, I'm
really,
not trying to convince people about past lives. I think that's our own choice if we believe or not. We will never know.
yeah, I agree. You have to figure out what makes sense for you, but it is an idea that has
But
always
even
resonated with
if we
me.
don't, yeah, same. But what I wanted to say is like, even if we don't believe or even if we don't know, like we cannot prove it, right? I think still there is this, how do we say this in English? This, the weight of the community. Like we are not the first people on earth. Hello. So it's the collective. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes.
It's the weight of the, even if, like, for example, I didn't fight World War II, and I don't think anyone in my family fought during that war. They did. They lived in France, so they did experience some of it, but they didn't really fight for it. I can still experience the trauma of it, not to the same degree as those who really have family member there, but still it's very traumatic to think that
Yes.
humans have done that, have been doing this. So I think the weight of what was done to women over the centuries, it's still here. It's here. It's in
Yes.
our consciousness. It's in our bones. It's in our DNA. It's in our memories. I think it's undeniable.
Absolutely. And it's still being done to women in many parts of the world. So we can feel both our
Yeah.
ancestral hurt, and then also we can feel the pain of the other women on the earth presently as well. It's again a good reminder to just claim your power and do your healing and hope that what you do for your wellness affects the world at a greater capacity, even if we can't see exactly how.
Yes. And you don't have to do it perfectly.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Good reminder. Don't be
You're
afraid.
allowed to mess it up on the way.
Yeah, and change your mind. Yeah, of course.
And I want to say, most importantly, laugh, dance,
Yes.
laugh, make up.
Yes.
Sometimes healing can take itself a bit too
Yeah.
seriously, like.
Right.
Yes,
Flagellation.
and
Right.
also embrace life. We are lucky to be here. And I
Yeah,
wanted
it
to
is.
ask you, what does it mean for you? Sorry. Yes,
Go ahead.
it's a bit.
No, go ahead.
No, what is for you? What does it mean for you being an empowered, sensitive, and creative?
Great question. Well, I think the key word for me in that phrase is empowered, because being sensitive and creative, many people are being sensitive and creative, but when you are empowered around it, everything changes. And so I think being empowered means that you are free in your life to live in the ways that your highest self wants to live, that are true to you. And that's a journey. It takes a lot of work. It's what we were talking about with healing and shadow work and boundaries. It's something that you take in little steps for a really long time, is to empower yourself, and maybe when you're a child, you're just sensitive and creative, and if you're lucky, you have a container around you that allows you to be free in those expressions. But when you're a child, you don't have control over the container around you, and then when you're adult, you do have to take control. And sometimes we in that moment when we take control, we realize that the bubble around us has actually been too small, or we need to shift in some way. And so that then is a lifelong journey of creating the environment around yourself that allows you to blossom. And to me, that's the empowerment. And most of us probably listening to this podcast are living in environments where we do have a lot of agency in our life. We have human rights, and we have our basic needs taken care of, and those things. And so when those basic conditions are met, then comes the inner work of really understanding who you are and what you need, and what you need specifically to be empowered. That being said, it's also good to recognize that there are, wonderfully creative, sensitive, intelligent people on the earth who don't live in the conditions where their needs are met, and they have the human rights to empower themselves. And that doesn't mean that they are choosing to not be empowered. It means that they, for whatever reason, their karma, their soul had to come into a life where they had to suffer in that way. And I think we can also be grateful to those people, those souls who have to live in those conditions. I think of the people in Palestine right now, or in other war zones, like wow, they are taking that pain so that the rest of us don't have to. And I am so grateful to them. I want their condition to change, but it's also my responsibility as someone who has the freedom. It's my responsibility to fully empower myself so that I can both be a happy, joyful human and give the most that Gabrielle can give, but also so that I can then empower others around me.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. Yes, thank you. I often think about that. Like why we get to be free, and why do they get to that's, by the way, that's one thing that I hold against this manifestation talk and this universe talk, when they said the universe wants the best for you, blah blah blah, and believe it and it's gonna happen. I'm like, yes and no, because there is war, and there are atrocious things being done, even not in war countries, in war-ridden countries. Even in our countries, there are some horrible things. People who really don't have a lot of choice, don't have a lot of options. But So why? And maybe, as you say, maybe it's the karma. Maybe they're taking the pain for us. Maybe that's. I think there are many things that we don't really know, but I totally agree with you. Like, we have the power to do what we can for ourselves, and if we do it for ourselves, then we can do it for others, and then it can help. I know it sounds a bit naive to say that. I used to be a cynic before, and I was like, well, you think you're gonna change the world with one little brick, but it's like one brick plus one brick. And I think if there are more people being happy with themselves, like, who know themselves, and more children who can follow their genius and not trying to become somebody else and all of that, there will be less wars, less crimes, less need to prove something and to take something from somebody else.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a choice we make, right? We can't know everything. We can't know why these things happen or what effect our actions will take, but we can make the choice to believe that if we take care of ourselves, it will have a good effect. And if you don't know, why not choose the choice that makes life better for yourself, It reminds me, actually, I'm going to tell a dirty joke because I think it's funny, and it also it illustrates the effective choice. And it's not that dirty, but the joke is that if you don't think that farts are funny, then you're choosing to live a very stupid life because you have the same amount of farts but way less laughter. So so that's kind of what I think it's like, if you don't know, but you have the choice to believe something that makes life feel better, might as well choose the thing that makes life feel better, because in the end of the day, you have the same life and the same amount of suffering, but why not choose something that's a bit more joyful?
Yes, why double the suffering when you don't have to? Exactly. I like that joke. Before we end, I want to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
About you. And one, first question is, if you are a color, what color would you be?
Oh,
A creative
periwinkle.
portrait.
I was just thinking this yesterday, that I was thinking that my favorite color right now is periwinkle. It's that soft blue of the sky right before the sun goes down, before the sky turns pink, but when the blue gets kind of dark and a little bit purple, that's my color.
Okay, I love it. And if you were a texture, what would you be?
Oh, you cut out there. What?
Sorry, if you were... Okay, hold on a second. Sorry, I'm gonna close the door. I see it's open. Okay. Okay. If you were a texture, what would you be? Texture.
Ooh. I would be really soft moss growing on a log.
Lovely. And if you are a scent?
I would be my favorite scent, which is jasmine mixed with a little bit of lavender.
And if you were a sound?
If I was a sound, I would like to be the sound of like chimes, like that you play in a sound healing bath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Do you have Irish ancestry?
A little bit, but mostly Scottish.
I don't know, like the Scottish. Okay, well,
Similar.
why not? Yeah, I don't know. The idea of the moss and the chime made me think about Ireland. Oh, do you remember
Yeah.
last time we talked when we started on the event? We talked about the grass in Ireland. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. That's right.
yeah. But anyway, and a taste. The last thing, a taste. If you're a taste, what would you be?
Oh. If I was a taste, I would be homemade bone broth with lots of herbs and ginger.
Very tasty and
Yeah.
healthy and nourishing. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And before we go, how can people work with you? Where can they find out more about you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at Gabrielle Wildheart or on my website, gabriellewildheart.com. And I do a couple times a year, or maybe once a year, have a small group program where I mentor artists on creating a career that is both financially successful and also aligned with their soul values. And that program is called The Quantum Artist. And you can find info about that at quantumartistcourse.com.
And to order your, like, do you also create some art on commissions, or do you just have some on your site, and if people like, they can collect directly from there? Like, how do you?
Yeah, website. There is a link to my store where you can see all the art I have for sale. There's a mix of prints and original paintings, and then I do large mural commissions, which you can also see my portfolio for on my website.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot. I will put all the links in the show notes, so no worries. Thanks a lot. I'm losing my voice right at that moment. Okay, hold on. Sorry. Thanks a lot for today. I love chatting with you and learning more about you, your experience, your practices, your insights about life. I love it. I love everything you shared. It's really inspiring. Thanks a lot.
Likewise. Such a pleasure to talk with you. Really wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Okay. Thank you for listening. I hope this conversation with Gabrielle sparked something true for you, a feeling, an insight, a creative nudge. If it did, feel free to share it or let me know. You can contact me on Instagram at rim.creativenergy. And if you're curious, I've started adding print versions of my art to my online shop, and more are coming soon, so feel free to keep checking back. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of your creative energy. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if it has inspired you, please share it around you. Also, if you feel called to it, please subscribe to the podcast and leave me a review. It really helps to spread the word out. All your questions are welcome. You can send them to me on Instagram at rim.creativenergy.com or email me via my website, rimcreativenergy.com. And don't worry, I'll share in the show notes exactly where to find me. Until next time, sending you loving creative energy.